So we're going to be talking about the Money Smart basics. What this is meant to do is be an introduction to some of the basic steps that you should be taking or thinking about when you're dealing with money. So this is not, we're not going to go into like some intense investing advice or anything like that. This is purely the basics. I'm Bailey Parker. I'm the communications director here at the South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs. Okay, I have to give this disclaimer every single time. This presentation is not meant to serve as a substitute for reading the various laws discussed or seeking legal counsel about questions that you may have. This is merely serving as an introduction and overview of the topic. You definitely don't want legal advice from me. I'm not an attorney. Okay, let's jump into this. So why people may not want to talk about money. So here are some statistics from a 2019 National Foundation for Credit Counseling survey. So 2 in 5 people said that they have a budget and keep close track of their spending. That means 3 out of 5 people are not doing that. 60% of people said that they had credit card debt, and 37% of those people carry that debt month to month. So it's revolving. They can't pay it off in full. 54% struggle to minimize their debt. So that may be credit card debt. That could be healthcare debt. That's one of the biggest areas of debt in the United States right now. 76% of people say they could just use general advice and answers to everyday financial questions. I think, especially as you get older, you may not want to ask the simple questions because you think you should know these things. If you weren't taught the basics of money or how to handle money, then where are you going to learn it? So there's no need to be embarrassed about these simple questions. We've all thought them before. Hopefully I can either teach you something today or remind you of these basics. So here are the 5 money basics. I divided them up into these 5 basic areas. So again, I love this meme on the right. You can't go over budget if you never make a budget. As much as I think that's funny, please don't be this mindset. I know when I was younger, I had no idea or concept of what a budget was, and I just kind of hoped and prayed when I swiped my card that it would go through. That's not a super smart or responsible way to handle your money. So we're going very basic here first. So we're going to say you're earning about $10 an hour. How much are you making monthly? You don't have to do this, but there is 2 different answers here. So your gross versus your net. Your gross is what you're going to have, what you're making $10 an hour before taxes, before healthcare, things like that. So the flat amount of $10 an hour. It's gonna be $1,600 a month, or if you're doing a paycheck every other week, you'll have about $800 a paycheck. Your net is after taxes and all of those extras. That goes down to $1,118 a month, or about $559 a paycheck. Well, where'd my money go? Sometimes people are thinking, well, where does it all go? Oh, that's a huge difference, right? That's taking away almost $1,000 that I could have every single month, about $800. Well, taxes are a large chunk of that, especially if you're working for a business or a corporation that takes your taxes out automatically. So let's do that breakdown real quick. Your gross pay per paycheck is $800. Your federal taxes is going to be about $56. Your FICA is going to be $44. Medicare, so FICA is like Social Security. Medicare, $10. State taxes, different from federal, $31. And if you are going to put into a 401k, if your company offers it, then that is a 5% investment right there every paycheck. And let's say you're a single adult who is getting healthcare offered through their job. That's about $100 a month, so $50 a paycheck. That's where we come down to. That's your net income, what's going to come in your either your check, your physical check, or the mobile deposit that the direct deposit that your company does. So let's say we're now in the spending area. We've got this much money to spend a month. Great. Well, I want to spend it on everything. This is when you need to make a budget. Now that you know how much is actually coming in to the cent, you need to be thinking about a budget. So these are the basics here, especially if you haven't sat down and really done a traditional budget before. This is how you can do it. So first, we've already done this. We've determined our income, a little over $1,100 a month. Then you need to determine your expenses. This is the one where it's a little bit like pulling teeth. I know it was for me, of actually sitting down and seeing what you're spending every single month. What this could look like is you printing out your financial statements from your online bank, or going into your bank and asking them to print out your statements, doing the same with your credit card, anything that you're spending money on. Get those statements, sit down with them. And then you're going to take another piece of paper. You're going to have needs on one side and wants on the other. And you're going to determine what your needs and your wants are. So your needs are going to be things that you absolutely need to live, in order to have a roof over your head, in order to have power, water, heat, transportation, whether that's a car or you're paying for public transportation of some sort, insurance, if you have any loan payments, so like student loans or a personal loan of some sort, and then savings. Savings should be in that needs category, okay? I know that's hard, but putting it in the needs category develops a habit there. Wants. As much as I want to go on a date with my husband every single month to a nice restaurant and go to a movie, do we need to do that? No, we don't need to, but I really want to. But that would go in on the right side. And then things like subscriptions, so Netflix, Hulu, going out to eat, fast food, clothes. So of course we need clothes, right? That's the only socially acceptable thing, is to go to work in clothes every single day. But are you buying way more clothes than you need? What you're going to do then, once you have those two areas separated out, you're going to add up all of your needs, including your savings, and then subtract from your income. Okay, so let's say your needs are $1,000 a month. I wish. I have two small children. Yeah, I wish my needs were only $1,000 a month, but let's say that's what it is. Then you're going to subtract that from your income. What we had earlier was about $1,100, so I'll about have $110 left over. Whatever you have left over, decide what you're going to put it toward. Don't just spend it at will. Don't go out and say, I got extra money, I'm going to start spending. Reason being, if we don't have a plan, if you don't have a plan for what you're going to do for your money, you have a tendency to, one, overspend, and two, not really make decisions that are good for the long run, okay? So what I want to talk about is these two budgeting techniques. The first one is called the zero-based budget. You're going to spend all your money every single month. And when I say spend it, I mean your checking account is going to have either your minimum balance of $15 or $25, or it's going to be at a zero balance. So you're going to put all your money into expenses, savings, debt payments, and equalize that all to zero by the end of the month. That means there's no extra wiggle room here. Everything is accounted for. These two ways are pretty strict, actually, because you're not leaving any wiggle room there. You're finding out exactly what you're spending and exactly what's coming in. So your savings is a part of that. Maybe if you do have money left over, that goes into savings, but you decide where it's going. That's a part of the zero-based budget. The envelope system, my husband and I actually did this when we first got married. He was going to school at the time, and I was working as a lowly assignment desk editor at a local news station in Salt Lake City, making next to nothing, and we were very poor. So the way we budgeted was we had three envelopes. One was wants, the other was needs, and the other was savings and debt. Every single check, every single dollar that came into our checking account, we cashed out, with the exception of our rent. Our rent had to be paid by a check. But we took the rest out in cash and we divided up that money into each of the envelopes. This is a very disciplined way of spending because you have to pay for everything in cash. When you pay for things in cash, you see the money leaving. It's so much easier to overspend on a debit or credit card because you're just swiping. You're not seeing those dollars actually leaving your hands. We did this because we knew that if we didn't have that physical money and we couldn't count the dollars, that we were going to overspend. Again, it's a very disciplined way of doing a budget, but if you have long-term goals that you really want to reach, these two ways may help you get there. And if you need help making a budget, there's a ton of free services, apps that you can look at. Just make sure to read the reviews. Even Microsoft Excel has a template for a budget. So if you already have Excel, you can just go and use the template. So just know that there are things out there that you can do and use for free. You don't have to do this by yourself. So when we're saving and investing, this is what people usually think about. This is our money throughout the month. First is going to go to taxes, then second, big chunk, necessities, third, lifestyle, and then whatever's left at the end is going to go into savings. The way I want people to think about it is, first, your taxes, because we got to pay taxes in order to stay legal. And then second, your savings. Your savings should be something that's coming out of your checking account and into the savings account as soon as it can. So you're budgeting in there. And then your necessities, then the lifestyle. So you're already taking out, because I know myself well enough. If I've got 50 bucks that I'm supposed to be putting in savings, but it's just sitting in my checking account, I might convince myself that, oh, it's okay if I don't do it this month. It's okay if I put that $50 somewhere else except for in savings. One thing I do want to mention before we go into borrowing is emergency savings funds are really imperative. It's not a savings account that you then just take out of because you need a couple extra dollars and you want to go out to dinner. The emergency savings is truly for emergencies. So when my son, when he was 1 year old, we had to take him to the emergency room. We were still paying off his delivery like a year earlier. He was a NICU baby. We had a lot of medical debt because of that. So we were still paying that all off. We had nothing in savings. And when we went to the emergency room, what did we have to do? We had to pay on a credit card. We didn't have emergency savings. We had maxed it out. That's an extreme version of this, but if we would have had any money in savings, we might have been able to offset some of that cost. Or even if we had blown a tire, we need $100 extra for a tire. If we didn't have an emergency fund for something like that, that'd have to go on a credit card. So that's the idea behind emergencies. It's truly for those emergency situations. So borrowing, what is credit? It's not just credit cards, because I think that's what people automatically think when they hear credit is, oh, it's a card. Really what credit is anytime you borrow money with the promise and obligation being a key word here, to pay it back later. So how likely you are to pay something back in a creditor's mind, so somebody who's giving you credit. If you have good credit, they're thinking you're easier to trust. If you have bad credit, they think you're harder to trust. So if you have a poor credit score, a creditor may look at you and say, they might not pay their loan. They might not make the payments every single month. We're not going to give them this loan or this credit card. The better credit you have is their signal or their way of thinking, okay, yeah, they'll probably be able to pay their bills. We'll give them the credit. I'm not here to talk about the morality of that. That's just how it is and how the thinking goes. With credit, it's you buy now, pay later, whether it's a credit card, a loan, a mortgage, a car loan, whatever it is, you're buying it now and you're paying later, and you're paying more than you would have if you would have bought outright. So what are the pros and cons of credit? So the pros of credit are, number one, it's convenient and it's one of the safest ways to pay, especially on a credit card. Credit cards are necessary to make certain reservations. Like hotels will not take a debit card a lot of the time. I mean, I'm sure there's exceptions, but the majority of hotels will not take a debit card. They'll take a credit card. Same with car rentals. They're going to require a credit card. Emergency funds, I just spoke about that. Credit cards are great for those emergencies, like the hospital visit, whatever it may be. And making larger purchases. I don't encourage people to get credit cards to get the points, but if you're responsible with your money, yeah, you can get some rewards from credit cards. That's one of the incentives they give you, right? So if you make a large purchase, you may be able to make some cash back, get points, whatever. They're good for those type of things. The cons of credit, though. Buy now, pay later, you have a tendency to overspend, right? You're thinking, oh, I'll have the money by the end of the month, so I'll just spend this extra $100. If you don't have the $100 now, you most likely won't have it at the end of the month. So we have a tendency to overspend when we are paying in credit. That interest is adding up. Every time you don't pay it off in full, whatever type of credit it is, that interest is adding up every month. I know my husband and I bought a house 3 years ago now, and I'm sure a lot of you who own homes feel this same way. That first 15 years, the majority of my payment is interest. And it's only been 3 years, so I'd say a vast majority of my mortgage payment is interest. So just know that it adds up. And that means you could be in debt forever, or it feels like it at least. Where that revolving debt just grows and grows, or it just stays the same because you can't pay any higher. It could actually affect your credit or your employment. So not a lot of people know that some employers are actually checking your credit report and credit score before they offer you a job. It's going to affect your credit score in the long run. And then the very bad ways, repossession of items, foreclosure, or even bankruptcy if you don't end up paying your bills. And just want to say here, credit is a privilege. It's not a right. No company is required to give you credit. Yes, there are protections for borrowers, so they cannot discriminate against you in any way, but it's not a right. It is a privilege. So just to give you an idea here, when you're borrowing, what if you only pay the minimum every month? I think until you see something like this, it's kind of just like an idea in your head, right? So if you're going to buy a PlayStation for $500 and your interest rate is 18%, which is lucky, how many years is it going to take to pay off? About a year and a quarter. So a year and 3 months. You're going to pay $58 in interest, and it's going to cost you $558 in the long run. But an iPhone 13, the maxed out one is $1,250, 18% interest, 4 years and 3 months there. Total interest paid $521. So you're going to pay $1,700, almost $1,800 on that phone. And just to let you know, in that time, probably 3 new iPhones will have come out in that period of time. So keep that in mind. And say you're going to buy a souped up computer from Apple or a gaming computer that's a PC, $2,500, 18%. It's going to be about 7.5 years to pay that off. $2,000 in interest, so about $4,500 for that computer. And to let you know, the average lifespan of a computer until it starts to become slow and basically obsolete is about 5 to 6 years. So your computer might be dead and you might need a new computer at that point. Just putting it out there. And now we're on to protecting. So it's important to protect your money from scammers, criminals, identity thieves. And we know this at Consumer Affairs because we take these reports. Last year, 738 reports came in for scams. That's up 20% from the previous year. These are the top 3 areas that people lost money in. So purchase scams, service and repair scams, and then crime and warrant scams. These are just the descriptions of each. Purchase is usually, I actually did the breakdown, and a lot of them are online shopping scams. These are the actual losses and potential losses. So potential losses are when somebody calls us and say, hey, I didn't fall for the scam, but this is what they wanted from me. So an estimate of what they would have lost if they fell for it. Actual losses was almost $3 million. That's up 216% from the year prior. So and this is just to people who report. We know there are more people out there losing money who just don't know to report to us or don't because they're too embarrassed. We know this number is way lower than it should be. So we want you to keep an open mind. Scams come in all shapes and sizes. They're over the phone, text message, in your mailbox, emails, fake websites, in person. They can happen in any way, shape, or form now. So your money and your information is valuable to scammers. Here are what you should do to keep your information and money safe. Number one, set up those account alerts on your bank accounts. So any type of spending limits, set up those if you can. Two-factor authentication is key here, or multi-factor authentication. They're going to send you a message if somebody tries to log into your account with a code. So say somebody else in North Carolina tries to log into my bank account. I'm going to get a text message saying, hey, here's your login code. Well, I'm not trying to log in. That's a key to me that somebody's trying to get into my account, most likely has my password. That means I need to go in and change my password, right? Two-factor authentication is the #1 way a consumer can keep their information safe. The FBI spoke to us last fall and said this is the best way that consumers can keep their digital stuff safe. Almost every platform offers it now, especially financial platforms. If your bank is not offering two-factor authentication, ask why and maybe consider a different bank. Online banking safety. Monitor your account regularly. You don't need to be like me. I'm a creature of habit and I check like every day. You don't need to be me, but at least once a week, maybe set a time, say, let me go through my account and just go through the purchases and make sure that everything is mine, including on your credit card accounts. Don't use public Wi-Fi to do your finances. Those are open networks that anyone can see the stuff that you're working on. I know it's tempting to use public Wi-Fi because of the data charges and things. It's not worth it to do anything that's going to involve private information. Don't access your financial accounts through emailed or pop-up links, even if they look legitimate. It is so easy for scammers to make emails that look great now. Gone are the old days where there's misspellings everywhere and they don't use logos. Some of these bank emails, fake bank emails, look very real. So just if you see something that's emailed through you, call your bank directly and ask them if it's legitimate. Always make sure you're on a website that has a secure server, so that S after the HTTP, oops, oh boy, and change your password regularly and don't share it. Get a password manager if you need to. Regularly means 3 to 6 months. Honestly, if you are changing it every 6 months, I think that's better than nothing. So if you haven't changed your passwords in a long time, now might be the time to think about it. Online shopping. Why should you never use a debit card online? I want to see if anyone actually can answer the question. Why should you never, ever, 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 ever use a debit card online? Does anyone have a reason why? Not seeing anything yet. Give it a couple more seconds. Okay. That's okay if you don't know. Debit cards are great. If somebody said hackers can access and steal your money, and then somebody says it takes your money right away. Yeah, your money's gone. So if a hacker or somebody gets into your account and you've saved your debit card information in there, that's a straight line to your checking account where your actual cash is. So debit cards, the pros are it's convenient. That's really the only pro, I'm going to be honest. Cons, it's tied directly to cash in your account, including all of those apps that you use like Venmo, Google Pay, Cash App. Those are direct lines into your checking account. So that's my alarm to remind me we're coming up on the end. Don't fool yourself into thinking like, oh, I don't use my debit card online, but I send money everywhere through Cash App, okay? Those are direct lines to your checking accounts, so always have passwords on those. Two-factor authentication is key. Less time to dispute charges. Legally, if somebody were to get your debit card and spend money from your checking account, the reporting time is much shorter than it is for credit cards. Credit cards have more insurance. It's not your actual money that gets stolen. So I know my dad had his debit card stolen, and when he disputed the charges, it took 6 months to see the money come back into his account. He reported it within a day of it being stolen, but it took 6 months to actually get that money back from the bank after their investigation. More liability and fraudulent charges. So if you don't report in time, or you report even closer to the end of that time, you may be liable for a certain percentage of the fraudulent charges. And auto drafts could be affected. So if you don't have money in your account and somebody steals money, you're going to get charged not late fees. You're going to get charged the overdraft fees. You could, if you have automatic payments coming out and there's not enough in there, overdraft fees, it's just going to cost you more money. Safe shopping tips I want to kind of close on here. Consider your payment options. When shopping online, again, credit card is king. There are more consumer protections for credit cards if something goes wrong across the board. So that insurance is going to cover you for at least 3 times the amount. So like, I think it's a 30-day time limit on a debit card, and then there's like 90+ days on a credit card. Just read your terms and conditions. Ask your bank or credit card company if they offer virtual cards. So I know Capital One offers virtual cards now, and it's also through like Apple Pay, that digital wallet, where you can enter in your information and they'll actually give you a one-time code or a one-time payment credit card number that you can use online. And then after that payment goes through, that number is no longer valid. That is a great way to add an extra layer of security, so you're not using the same number across the internet. So ask your company if that's something they offer. And when it comes to Apple Pay or a digital wallet of some sort, you can put your information in there. So you can put your existing credit cards in there, and it'll do kind of the same thing where it will auto generate a number and you can pay through that or directly through the app. And just want to say, this is a last reminder here, always pay attention to the website's URL. A not secure site is going to not have an S after the HTTP. A lot of times a secure site will have a little green lock in the left-hand corner like you see here. Okay, so we have a couple of minutes left. I do want to just remind everybody about the red flags of a scam. And if you got questions, start typing them in now. I see one question that we can definitely get to. Asks you to verify personal identifying information. Anyone that shows up out of the blue asking you to give over information of any kind, huge red flag. They're asking you to wire transfer money or purchase gift cards, any type of gift card, prepaid or reloadable debit cards, even cryptocurrency now. That's a huge red flag of a scam. Asks you to send a check, to cash it, and then wire the money elsewhere. Huge red flag. If they're posing as any type of local, state, or law enforcement officer, government official, that's a huge red flag. Scares you or threatens you with arrest or garnishment, or just tries to make you scared in general, that's a red flag, and then makes you think their offer's time sensitive. So you need to do this now or else. So that's kind of a combination of time sensitive and scaring. So if you don't pay me in the next 3 hours, we're gonna shut off your power. So these are all the biggest red flags of scams. I wanna thank you so much for coming today. Hopefully you learned something new, or this was just a good refresher of, hey, maybe I haven't been managing my money as well as I can. So let's sit down and do that budget.